The METUS Tech Show.
Welcome to the METUS Tech Show, a show for HVAC professionals by HVAC professionals.
The METUS Tech Show.
So Juan,
Yes.
it is the season of apple picking up here in the Northeast. And so this weekend I went to an apple orchard and I got a bushel of apples, which when I got there and bought the bag, I didn't think that it was going to be that many apples, but I ended up getting like 40 apples.
Oh, my goodness.
In that
you never
bag.
thought a bushel was that many, huh?
No, and then I kind of forgot. Every year I make apple crisp for all my family and everything. I kind of make them their own and drop it off. And it only takes like 3 or 4 apples to make it.
Oh, wow.
So I have about 10 apple crisps to make. And so this morning I made one for you.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, my word. It was awesome.
Very good.
Yeah, I'm going to share with you first my top 3 desserts. First is the peach cobbler. Peach cobbler right out of the oven.
Yeah.
So steaming hot. Just cut me a corner because I'm partial to corners. So cut me a corner and put it on a plate and bring out the vanilla bean ice cream because I'm going to put 2 scoops on that thing and just watch it melt and let the cobbler just soak it up.
Yep.
Oh, my goodness. I'm in heaven there.
Yeah.
The second one is the pecan pie.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, I love pecan pies. And the same way, though, right out of the oven, when it's steaming, just give me the vanilla bean ice cream. Just watch it melt. Yeah. And just spoon it and just let it soak into your taste buds.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm getting hungry as we speak.
I know.
But the third was the apple crisp.
Okay, good.
And today, that has been my favorite. Okay. So, yeah,
I even brought the vanilla ice cream for
Yes.
You.
Oh,
so I made sure to do it right.
You just appealed to my taste buds.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
So, what process do you go through in making it?
So I definitely kind of take the easy route. So I have my peeler and I have the apple core. So like I said, I kind of forgot how many apples it takes, but it's usually like 3 or 4 depending on the size.
Okay.
But you peel them, you core them, so it kind of automatically slices them into the 8 slices. I actually will cut them a little bit thinner. So I'll usually cut them into 16ths just so it's thinner instead of a big chunky apple. And then that gets sugar, cinnamon and vanilla on it, extract, and you kind of mix it all together, and then that goes in the pan. You do a buttered pan. Make sure you get a little bit of butter in there.
We should uprun some here.
Yeah. it's only 20 feet away.
I know. Don't tempt me.
Yeah. And then the crust, which is the star, right? Like the apples is a traditional apple filling, but the star is the crust, getting that nice crispy crumble on top. And so it's some flour, brown sugar, also more cinnamon, and then you melt half a stick of butter, and that kind of binds it all together and makes it that nice paste that is nice and easy to spread. And then it goes in the oven at 350 for about 40 minutes. And then what I do at the end is, because sometimes when you do it that way, the crust doesn't get like a real crisp, crunchy flavor. Oh, and oats. I forgot the oats in there too. There's oats in the topping.
That's what makes it healthy.
Yeah, that's the best.
Come on. Got to have my fiber at my age.
Basically a granola bar at that point.
Exactly.
So yes, then you also need the oats. But what happens is sometimes you'll take it out of the oven after the 40 minutes and it's not crunchy. It doesn't have a nice, hard top. It's still kind of soft. And so then at the end, I'll take just pads of butter and spread it around the top. And then put it back in for about 10 minutes, and that's what helps crisp up the
awesome.
top. Yeah. And then it comes out, and it's got that nice hard shell with the nice soft, apples, and you got to have the ice cream.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, after this podcast, I expect a copy of that recipe, okay?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'll probably crash and burn, but I'll crash and burn trying to make it.
Yeah. Do you make any desserts?
I don't. No, I really don't.
You just enjoy it.
Actually, I take it back. I did make one, a flan.
Yeah.
And my wife loved it.
Yeah.
It shocked me.
That's hard, right?
Yes. It's a long process.
Yeah.
But I was shocked as to how it turned out.
Yeah.
So I said, sweet. And it was.
Yep.
Because we used condensed milk.
Yep.
It's the only way to do it. Some people they use evaporated milk
Okay.
to make it less sugary. I said, I just give me a pound of sugar. I'm happy.
You're already eating dessert. You might as well. Yeah.
Oh, that was good. So, Bryn, what are we going to talk about today?
So we're going to talk about another error code. We covered the 1500 error code last week. And so we're going to get into the 7102 error code.
Okay.
So basic definition, right? And this is where, and I'm sure you do in class too, is if you go to a service manual and all you do is look at the definition, you're going to get something that says wrong number of connected units.
What does that look like?
Yeah. What does that mean and how do I diagnose it, right? So we usually have to scroll down a little further to get our actual check methods, our remedies, to actually figure out what's going on. So what does it mean when it says wrong number of connected units?
Well, that could be addresses are set wrong because on the MNet is not seeing it.
Yeah.
Because the system will know the model numbers that are connected on the MNet.
Right.
And if it doesn't see that right amount of capacity, it's going to give you a 7102.
Sure.
So that's the first thing to look at, is to make sure that you're not over-connected. And the first thing to look at also is regarding that is we teach maximum connected units are 50. Well, but that's dependent on the capacity of the outdoor unit.
Right.
For instance, the 72,000 BTU only gets 18 indoor units.
Right.
So even though we only talk about 50, because our addressing scheme is 0 to 50,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that all sizes get 50 indoor units. And if you don't go to class or don't go to training or don't read the manual, you may think, well, I've got a 96,000, for instance. I'm going to connect 50 indoor units to it. And then there comes a 7102.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, the 96 model takes 24 indoor units.
Right.
So, and it's all specified in the service manual.
Yeah. That's the thing, especially with Y series, right? Because Y series capacity is very important. The capacity and how many heads you can have is important. And you may be under capacity with the amount of heads you have. But if you exceed the amount of indoor units that are allowed on that system, it's still going to give you that 7102, even if you're not over capacity. So that's when it kind of becomes important as far as that goes, is how many heads are you actually hooking up, which DSB will solve for you.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, and that's one thing I share on my classes. I'm all about sharing responsibility. Because if I do it all just by what I hear somebody else did, or just do the calculation on a piece of paper, who's responsible? The contractor is.
Right.
All right. But when you bring DSB into the picture, Diamond System Builder, you're actually sharing that responsibility with us, Mitsubishi.
Right. Because
if it doesn't work after the design Diamond System Builder told you that it would work, then we're going to have to look at that job.
Yeah. Right. That's true. 7102, and you had mentioned addressing too. So we can have either one or two outdoor units, depending on the capacity as well.
Yes.
Simply by addressing something as an outdoor unit by accident, when it's actually, let's say, a branch controller or an indoor coil, it's harder to do with an indoor coil. But if you were to do it that way and it sees 3 outdoor units, you might get an error code that's going to be 7102. It's the same thing, wrong number of connected units.
Yes.
So it's a vague term, but it does kind of make sense when you start to think about the things that can cause it. It's you have way too many indoor units on the system. You have too many outdoor units that are allowed. And it could be something as simple as an addressing error, not necessarily you actually did put 3 outdoor units on the system.
I mean, you could even address one indoor unit at 51.
Yep.
It's outside the range.
Yep, exactly.
Because the addressing range for indoor units is 1 to 50. So you address it at 51, the system knows it's an indoor unit, so it's a no-no.
Yep.
So it's going to give you a 7102.
Yep. And then the same applies for branch controllers. If you put 2 mains on a system, you'll end up with that 7102. We get 1 main and up to 11 BCs, or sub-BCs, excuse me. So if we have 2 main BCs, we're going to get that 7102. Or if we have 12 or more sub-BCs, we can get that error code. So that's kind of the reason, or the most obvious reasons why we might get a 7102, but there are some other reasons,
Yes.
right? It's not always as cut and dry as it always is with heat pumps, right? So what are some other things that can cause a 7102 that do not have to do with exceeding those limitations?
A shorted MNet,
Yep.
a shorted daisy chain.
Sure.
Because again, you're shorting that signal out, and what happens to a DC circuit when it's shorted? It goes to zero.
Yeah, 0 volts.
So there's no communication. The system knows that it had at one time so many units connected, so now it doesn't see it, even though it's looking for it. So again, it goes back to the 7102.
Yeah. So in theory, even the things that, like a shorted MNet, right? You're going to have 0 volts on your MNet. But what's really happening is your outdoor unit isn't seeing any units.
Right.
So you have the wrong number of connected units.
Yes.
And its mind, you have 0, right? It's like, I don't see anything. This isn't right. It's going to give you that 7102. If I ever see a 7102, the first thing I do is check my MNet voltage.
Right.
Just makes it really simple. See what I have for voltage on TB3. That's a good starting point, especially if you hooked up maintenance tool and nothing comes up, right? There's your sign. I should probably be taking a look at my MNet wiring.
Disconnected wires, the same way.
Yep.
Okay. Outdoor unit's not seeing it. It's going to give you a 7102.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's again, same fault code number or error code as a shorted MNet.
Yeah. Yep. What I have found sometimes is with a shorted MNet, you will be stuck in a scroll when you first power on, but then eventually it'll give you a 7102. So it's been kind of hit and miss. Sometimes it just stays in that scroll where as soon as we power up, we scroll through those 4 pieces of information. Sometimes it'll be stuck there for a long period of time, but I've also seen it jump right over to a 7102, and it's kind of intermittent. I don't know exactly what causes it to change, but I've seen both. I've seen it either be stuck in a scroll or I've seen it jump to a 7102.
Right. And yeah, when typically, and that's it, when it gets stuck in I had an email from an individual that attended one of my classes in Orlando. He's from the islands in the Caribbean. And he sends me an email, said, Juan, I've got a fault code on the outdoor unit. It's a 2136. I can't find that number in the service manual. So I said, I got to look. So I go look for a 2136. Sure. Then it dawns on me. That's the firmware version in the circuit board. Yep. I said, it's got to be stuck scroll. Yep. So I emailed him back. That is not a fault code. That's the firmware version in that circuit board. Right. You need to be looking for either a cut wire or a shorted wire somewhere in the MNet. Sure enough, one day later, he sends me an email. He found out that the plumber had cut the wire.
Oh, goodness.
Dang plumbers, you know. Who needs them, right?
You said it, not me. But yeah, that does happen. In my classes, if I ever short the MNet as part of the exercise, mine says 2640. And I wait, and they'll start looking for a 2640 in the service manual, and I'll let them do it for a little while. And then I typically ask them, what does an error code look like on our LED screen? Because one of the biggest indicators that 2136 or that 2640 is not an error code is that it's not alternating with the address.
That's right.
Right? If we're just seeing that 4-digit number and it's not going back to an address, then we know it's not an error code. And that kind of gets the wheels turning. And I tell people in class, all you have to do to have a successful troubleshooting portion of the class is remember everything I said, because I try to make sure we cover all the bases.
Of course, you better believe
it's a lot in 3 days. But
so with that said, every time you see a 4-digit number, it may not be a fault code.
Yep.
So
we need to see that
keep
address.
that in mind. Yes.
So actually, with the 7102, a couple of things as well is the brilliant Rick Powell. Mr.
Miyagi.
I got him on the phone one time because my hybrid VRF, I could not get rid of the 7102. And I was checking my MNet voltage everywhere. I had 29 volts on all my indoor units, both my branch controllers and my outdoor. It had solid. I double checked my wiring. Everything was great, but I could not get out of that 7102. And Rick had kind of said it in passing, but he said typically a 7102 is because the outdoor unit can't see a branch controller. And that kind of stuck with me. Is like,
oh, really?
Yeah. If it sends that signal out, right, and it sees 0, essentially it's that wrong number of connected units. If it can't get a signal back from the branch controller, it goes into that 7102 pretty quick. So sometimes, and this I think might be particularly with the hybrid VRF, but it probably is across the board, I had to leave everything powered off for a little while. I couldn't just get it to reset by doing a power cycle. I really had to let everything discharge. So I had my indoor units powered off, my branch controller powered off, my sub and my outdoor unit all powered off. And I left it that way for like a half an hour.
Okay.
And then I went and powered on my indoor units, then my branch controllers.
Proper power up sequence.
Then my outdoor unit, and it cleared. But it was the only thing I could do to get it to clear. If I waited 5 minutes, I'd power back on, it'd go into a 7102. That one was strange. It almost seemed like it took a while for that particular error code to reset, but just time. Leaving everything powered off in time, it was able to
And
reset.
that makes sense because when we teach the wiring, the daisy chain, we go from the outdoor unit, TB3, to TB2 at the branch controller.
Yep.
So it's the first thing the outdoor unit sees if we're wiring it logically,
Right.
like we teach it. And then from the branch controller, we go to TB5 and the indoor units. So it's like a sequence that MNet goes through.
Yeah. Yep. So not exactly sure what caused it in the first place, but it was interesting. It was two pieces of information about 7102 I picked up, which is that typically it's because it doesn't see a branch controller, and also that sometimes you need to really let that thing, give that thing some time to reset the error code, because it took probably like a half an hour before it actually
I think
reset.
I've heard 15 to 30 minutes is what you should let it discharge. And what we're doing is we're discharging the capacitors.
Yep.
So what else do you think can cause a 7102?
So the other one that could be the case, which we talk about sometimes, is your TB3 and TB7 being crossed.
Reversed.
So TB3 is the start of our MNet. TB7 is where we bring in our central controller, or if we're twinning refrigerant circuits or grouping across refrigerant circuits, that TB7 wire comes into play. And if those are crossed, essentially you're going to have no MNet going to your indoor units or your branch controllers, and so you're going to get that same error code.
That's correct. And we have a sequence also that we teach in the classes. So the MNet, TB3, the MNet begins where? At the outdoor unit.
Yeah.
Which is an output out of TB3 at the outdoor unit.
Right.
TB7 is an input from the centralized controller if we have a centralized controller.
Right.
So when those two wires or two cables get reversed, the simplest test is to power down, give it 5-7 minutes, at least until the lights go out, disconnect the MNet cable from TB3, and then you power up. And which of the two terminals should have power?
Well, your TB7 should be the one with power.
Right.
Well, no, if you're in your case, you'd be checking for TB3.
TB3?
Yeah. Yep.
Correct.
So I teach it slightly different, which is why I got a little confused.
Okay.
What I will typically instruct is if you have TB3 and TB7 crossed and you power down the outdoor unit, where should the voltage be? And it should be on TB7, because our central controller is powered separate, bringing that voltage in. So if you check and you've still got voltage on TB3 with the power off, you know you're crossed.
You're going to, absolutely.
So that's just another way of teaching. That's how I got confused
I
by
think
your
I've
example.
confused myself. I'm thinking about the Apple Crisp.
Yep, that's what it is. So the other thing that can cause a 7102 is it says the model selection switch SW5-7 at the outdoor unit is set to off, which is typically set to on.
Set to on.
That's an easy check.
Yes, very easy. Now, granted, SW5 has to do with capacity setting.
Yep.
Which is the model
capacity.
setting.
Yep.
So, and it's typically switches 3 through 8 because SW5-1 is what tells the system, hey, I've got a centralized controller connected. SW5-2 is what clears the MNet should the MNet get discombobulated.
Right.
That's a big word for me.
You did great.
Don't ask me to spell it, okay?
You did great.
So when the MNet comes discombobulated, you need to reset SW5-2 to clear it, and then you should be okay. But yes, this one here is SW5-7 should be on.
Typically.
Exactly.
And this is a good example because what we have in front of us right now is just the a printout of the error code 7102. And the check method and remedy. And I tell people sometimes, look at what the potential causes for an error code are. And if there's really easy ones like SW5-7, just check it, right?
That's it.
Maybe knock off the easy ones first.
Yes.
And then if that's not, and that's not always the best solution, but with a case like this where you're just trying to eliminate certain things, go with the easy ones. Check your dip switches, double check your MNet voltage. those are two really quick checks
Yes,
that you can
absolutely.
do that will start to narrow down what could be going on. There are other times where you have like a troubleshooting flow chart where you really do have to go in order for the process of elimination to work. In this case, there's just some quick checks. Just like if you pull up a service manual on residential and it tells you to check the power board or do an inverter check, and then the last thing says check stop valves. I'm going to check the stop valves first, right?
Yes.
I'm going to check my service valves, make sure they're open, and then if they're open, I'm going to do my inverter check, right? Things like that.
That doesn't require any tools, so that's something to remove the cap.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
So that's awesome.
Yeah. So anything else? I think that just about does it, huh?
That's because we already talked about the outdoor unit.
Yeah.
If it's not addressed properly, it's
Or not sequential addresses. I guess that's another one to bring up.
And the old adage is no duplicate addresses.
Right.
Yep. That should go without saying. But yeah, that's it.
Cool.
That's pretty much.
Well, I'm glad because I can't stop thinking about Apple Crisp.
Oh my goodness. you know where we're going after this.
Yep.
We're going to fire up that microwave and I'm going to get me some ice cream.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I'm probably going to have to make another one before you leave this week.
Oh, we're
going to go through that pretty
You
quick.
will make me so happy. Yeah. I might even stay.
Yeah. I wonder if I can ship one to you. Maybe you ship Apple Crisp.
Just send me the recipe.
Yeah.
If I crash and burn, then I'll have you send one to me.
So the key is, though, you have to get Honeycrisp apples.
Okay.
Because, and like we've talked about it, but because you're putting so much sugar in both the crust and in the filling,
Right.
you need some tartness. And Honeycrisp are known for having kind of a tart flavor, but you need some of that to offset how sweet everything is.
So I wonder if you would use Granny Smith apples,
I think you could.
because that's my favorite apple.
Yeah, you
'Cause
definitely
I love
could.
the tartness.
The only thing with Granny Smith, and this could be like revisionist history, but they are a little bit more firm.
Yes.
So they might take a little bit more time in the oven to soften,
You may be right.
possibly. I just haven't had a Granny Smith apple in
And
so
that's okay
long,
with
but
me because
yeah.
I could be just dipping into the ice cream when I'm waiting on the apple tart.
Yeah, you can start warming it up, put it on top of the oven.
Exactly.
But yeah, I've always gone with the Honeycrisp for that reason, because like I've tried it before with like a Mac, which is typically kind of just a sweet flavor, and it ends up being too sweet, where it's just like cloying and
then
very.
it's not really that good.
Yeah, I need something to balance out
Yes.
all the sugar that I'm about to
Absolutely.
eat. So that little bit of tartness makes me not feel as bad about it.
All right. Well, we're ready to go now, aren't we? All right. Well, we hope this was beneficial to the field individuals that are out there in the battleground.
Yeah. Well, I think the plan is we're going to start doing an error code an episode and just
good.
kind of try to knock out. They're not going to be as long possibly, but maybe 20 to 25 minutes where we just talk about all the things I would do if I was in the van, getting that service
Yes.
call, seeing that error code. And the hope would be that then a technician who maybe is on a service call can pull up our podcast and just look for the episode that corresponds to the error code.
Absolutely.
And
And
they
then
can start
You'd have to
listening.
upload a 600-page manual to find it.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, we'll give you the basics anyway.
all right. Well, thank you, Bryn.
Yeah, no problem. And of course, if you want to come to training, MitsubishiComfort.com. The website's a little bit different now, but you just scroll down to the For Professionals, and that's where you can access your contractor portal, see a schedule, and then look at all of our digital media that we have for training, tech links, and all that good stuff.
All right.
All right.
All right. So, hasta la vista.
Hasta la vista.